What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast. I am, of course, your host. Who does the most? Ethan Smith. Hope you all are having a phenomenal Tuesday, May 31st, as we wrap up the month of May here today on the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, I am your host, Ethan Smith, and on today's episode, it is Q&A Tuesday, a new segment we're going to be doing every single Tuesday where you send in your questions via YouTube, via Twitter, anywhere you ask a question, it will be answered on Twitter Tuesday or on Q&A Tuesdays, Twitter Tuesdays, Q&A Tuesdays, whatever you guys want to call it. But for now, it's going to be Q&A Tuesdays because I think it's a phenomenal name. I think it's a phenomenal segment to get you guys involved. And of course, on the ticker on the bottom, a nice little ticker we have now. Make sure you make Locked On Pirates your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And with all that said, it's Tuesday, May 31st, and let's have a fun Q&A Tuesday.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast, everybody. I love when that music hits because that's how you know it's time to get real. Of course, again, on that ticker, make sure you make Locked On Pirates your first listen of the day every single day. You can follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your coverage of the Pittsburgh Pirates, the minor leagues, and baseball news. And of course, on today's episode, it is Q&A Tuesday, where I asked you guys to submit your Pittsburgh Pirates questions amidst everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. It was a up and down May, by the way, as they wrap up the month of May tonight against the Los Angeles Dodgers after beating the Dodgers again at Chavez Ravine last night, 6-5 in a late nighter, which we've had a lot of late nights over here in Pittsburgh with a West Coast trip. But with the questions, we're going to go ahead and get started today with a fun fan of the Pittsburgh Pirates and, of course, the Locked On Pirates podcast, Pirates Drew, who says, in my opinion, the Pirates are right to wait to call up Mason Martin. What do you think? And I'm sure you'll be especially rooting for him because of that interview. Yes, it was a while ago, but make sure you go check out that awesome interview that I did with Mason Martin. The dude is an absolute stud. He's an awesome guy, and he's playing very well right now at AAA. And I've spoken about this on multiple occasions regarding Mason Martin, that when you're looking at team fit, it makes sense to bring up Mason Martin. That was before the Pirates decided to acquire Cleveland Guardians infielder Yu Chang, who last year, by the way, if I wanted to throw a nugget in there, actually had the second best OPS on the roster behind Jose Ramirez after the All-Star break. So we'll see what Yu Chang can do. We'll see how he fits into the mold. But again, maybe that's just a sign to say they want to hold off on Mason Martin a little bit. Maybe they think, okay, he's playing well right now, but maybe you want to wait just a little bit to see what Mason Martin will give you at the major league level. And I don't really have an issue with that. I get that a lot of people are very, very impatient right now about the state of the team because we're having to watch guys like Josh Van Meter play. Rodolfo Castro, by the way, a guy who almost became an afterthought, has all of a sudden just erupted on the scene. Of course, he's struggling a lot defensively at the shortstop position, but he is getting some quality at-bats in there alongside the defensive struggles. But Mason Martin, I think the biggest thing that he'll bring to this team eventually, which is also the same thing I think they'll bring with O'Neal Cruz, is that power element that this team has been lacking. And last night against the Dodgers, you got to see Tucupita Marcano contribute in that power department. You got to see Brian Reynolds contribute in that power department. And the Pirates' style of play is not power. It's, bloop singles, doubles in the gap. That's how they work. But that's not a sustainable, successful plan to win baseball games. And be it it's not that bad. I still wouldn't mind the addition of Mason Martin to this roster as an everyday first baseman. Yoshi Tsutsugo, of course, injured right now. Michael Chavis kind of playing over there a little bit. Ben Gamel, Yu Chang, also options. Josh Van Meter is an option over at first base as well. So they have a plethora of options right now. But at some point, I do think they're going to pull the trigger on Mason Martin and bring him up. Thank you, Pirates Drew, as always, for submitting the questions here. Always a phenomenal guy, always asking the really good questions. Another big fan of the Locked On Pirates podcast, Keith Wendell, asked, should the Pirates consider bringing back Jose Quintana for next year if he keeps producing? This is another question that I flirted with a little bit over the last couple of weeks, with Jose Quintana playing very well for the most part. Not getting the run support you would like to see, but again, he's an innings eater for this Pirates team. He's a veteran presence amongst a lot of young pitchers. He's easily the oldest pitcher or starting pitcher on the roster, featuring guys like Zach Thompson, Mitch Keller, Rolanzi Contreras, JT Brubaker, and other guys like that who have gotten starts. But it's shaky just because you don't really know what his value is going to be at the trade deadline. I think if Ben Cherington knew what his value was going to be to a team like the New York Mets, who are without DeGrom, Scherzer, and Tyler McGill right now, or another contending team that is looking for starting pitching help, if you knew that already, then you can make that decision. I think that around the trade deadline, Keith, you'll probably get that answer to your question on if they should consider it. One, because by then half the season's gone, and if he's still producing that way, you could potentially talk about getting a top 100 prospect back for Jose Quintana, because you're not talking about trading a reliever like they did last year with Clay Holmes and Austin Davis and Richard Rodriguez. Those guys got you back decent stuff, but those are relief pitchers. Starting pitching down the stretch is a big deal, especially for a guy like Jose Quintana, who is an innings eater. As I said, he's a phenomenal player. He's done really well. He's revitalized his career a little bit. He's a left-handed pitcher who offers you a great array of pitches. He gets out there and he pitches the contact, but the contact that he's pitching to is not getting hit too hard right now. He's not allowing a lot of hard contact from what I know. He does have weird numbers on Baseball Savant on his chart about hard hit numbers, but his whiff rate is really good also. So either way, depending on the trade package they would get back, I would be okay with trading him. I would be okay with extending him another year or two. But it's one of those things that you have to be on the fence about, just because maybe this is a Adam Frazier kind of thing where he plays really well for the Pirates and then gets traded and doesn't play well then. And teams might think that as well. Teams always have something on their mind about that kind of stuff, and I'm pretty sure that they're going to have that on their mind about Quintana. But if he goes on the trade market and he continues to produce the way he is, he's easily the best pitcher available on the trade market, in my opinion. Yeah, you got guys like Luis Castillo in Cincinnati, but he doesn't have the numbers that Jose Quintana has right now. So thank you, Keith, for a phenomenal question. I always appreciate that. And we'll move on to Sean Higgins, who asks, how much should the Bucks hold on their lineup given this last week's performances, i.e., hold off on call-ups to let the team become more cohesive? Do they have a lineup hole that a ready prospect could fill? I'll start with the last part of this question. Do they have a lineup hole that a ready prospect could fill? As mentioned in the first question about Mason Martin, I think he could fill multiple voids over there at first base. One, with the power element. Two, being a healthy first baseman, as well as just being an everyday first baseman. That's something they really need to find right now. And before the season started, I knew that was going to be an issue. Daniel Vogelbach, who has been playing well before his injury, was a good option over there, but he's not great defensively. So DH, fine. Yoshi Tsutsugo took the dip that everybody didn't want him to take, and defensively also not that great. You throw Michael Chavis over there, which I enjoy because you get his bat into the lineup guaranteed. But then you get a little interesting in terms of the middle infield, just because, again, you hear the announcers talk about it all the time, about the depth. Now, I'm not saying the depth of this team is good, but they have a lot of questions they need answered about a lot of these guys. They answered it about Cole Tucker already. Is Rodolfo Castro a good bench bat on this team, or can he solidify himself as a good middle infielder? Can Michael Chavis do the same thing? Can Hoy Park do the same thing, even though he just got options? So that probably answered their question. You then have to put O'Neal Cruz into the fold eventually, which Pirates fans want him up so bad. I know. Be patient. It'll happen. But O'Neal Cruz is another guy that could fill some lineup holes as well. A strong left-handed bat like Mason Martin. Mason Martin and O'Neal Cruz both coming up gives you three things. Half decent defense, I would say. A power dynamic on the left side of the plate, as well as just young guys that you need answers to the questions that you have. That's the biggest thing that's going on right now. So, how do I feel that they should hold on to the lineup given the performances? You've seen the lineup fluidity all year. Derek Shelton has gotten a lot of crap for that, being very fluid with the lineups. But I think he's finally starting to realize what's working and what's not. Like Cal Mitchell has come up and done very well. Ben Gamble is an everydayer. Brian Reynolds, everydayer. Ke'Bryan Hayes, everydayer. Josh Van Meter, for some freaking godforsaken reason, is an everydayer. Even though recently he has a very good OPS and a very good average, I still don't believe in Josh Van Meter. When he's healthy, Yoshi Tsutsugo, I would say, is in there. So holding the lineup together is not exactly my biggest thing. But if they can become more cohesive, I think that would help this team a very long way. But I already feel like they kind of have. Like Cal Mitchell has already kind of instituted what he is into this lineup. You see Tucupita Marcano even institute himself into this lineup. You've seen a lot of this stuff happen already, and that's very good to see. Holding off on the call-ups, we've already kind of seen that already. Rolando Contreras, Diego Castillo, Tucupita Marcano, Yuri De Los Santos. A lot of different guys have been called up already, but also sent down pretty quickly as well. We've seen Hoy Park get called up and called down. Cole Tucker get called up and called down. So the call-ups, holding off on that, kind of an interesting move, but you never know. Thank you again, by the way, Sean, for that great question. Waffles. CA Waffles asked, when will we get a new catcher? This is something that is very interesting to me because, as me and Gary talked about a few weeks ago, they put a lot of emphasis on the idea of having a veteran catcher in Roberto Perez. He's gone. So you put the emphasis on having Roberto Perez in the lineup every day because he was a veteran catcher that was helping this team. He really was. I mean, you heard JT Brubaker speak about his absence now, saying, oh, we learned a lot from him. We were learning a lot of stuff from Roberto Perez. He was teaching us new things, teaching us pitch placement, all that good stuff. But now you haven't really done anything to fix it. You have Michael Perez. You have Taylor Heineman. But that's not going to get it done. So I think at some point they might look around for a catcher in the trade market. One guy that I definitely wouldn't mind is Alejandro Kirk from the Toronto Blue Jays. Reason he gets put to mind is because you have Danny Jansen there. Gabriel Marino, who's a big prospect over there, will eventually be coming up for the Blue Jays. Alejandro Kirk may end up being the guy, the odd man out there. I would really like to see him come up or get traded to Pittsburgh, especially because right now the catcher position is not that great in the minor leagues. Jamie Ritchie, Endy Rodriguez, Abraham Gutierrez, a lot of guys. Henry Davis is way too far away still. So do they find a new catcher eventually? Sure. And then I loved bucking over, by the way. Can O'Neal play catcher? And then Waffle says, let's find out. I think that's hilarious. I really do think that's pretty funny stuff right there. But before we get into any more questions, today's episode, of course, is brought to you by our wonderful partners over at betonline.ag. Of course, our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action going on over at BetOnline, like who's going to win NL AL Cy Young, NL AL MVP, and NL and AL Rookie of the Year. So BetOnline, of course, is where the game starts. Of course, the Pirates are underdogs on betonline.ag tonight at Chavez Ravine against the Los Angeles Dodgers, where they will look to beat the Dodgers in a series again. That'll be very interesting to look over. And now we move back into the questions. And this one is from Justin McKinney, which is pretty straightforward, by the way. Very straightforward question is, does Nutting care? Justin, you should probably already know the answer to that question. But I'm going to give a different approach to the answer to this question. The question of if Bob Nutting cares about this team always is boiled down to payroll, right? So fans usually get mad at Nutting for not spending money. And they, which is fine. They want the team to compete. I want the team to compete. I want the team to be good. You guys want the team to be good. I would much rather be talking about this team being competitive right now than talking about a rebuild, talking about prospects not being called up. Prospects not being called up is the part where I'm going to answer this question, Justin. Does Nutting care? So we've already established that he doesn't like to spend money. So then in turn, Pirates fans are getting mad about O'Neill Cruz and Mason Martin not coming up yet. Super 2, which still exists, mind you, helps Bob Nutting save money. O'Neill Cruz will be up after Super 2 passes. I will tell you that right now. That will happen. It might happen minutes after Super 2 is done. It really might. So Pirates fans are getting mad because Nutting is saving money here and keeping O'Neill Cruz for another year, but then are the same people that will get mad about Nutting for not spending money. In this situation, he's supposed to save money. And this is where I've already said the CBA was very flawed because stuff like Super 2 was supposed to get fixed. Players were supposed to get paid more. They were supposed to get paid quicker. It didn't get fixed. So that's the one thing I always go back to. I am not a Bob Nutting supporter. Let me go ahead and say that now. I don't support the guy. I don't. Do I get mad at him, though, for instituting something that he doesn't have to do? No. If your boss called you tomorrow and said, you can get paid still, but you don't have to come to work tomorrow, 99.9% of the time, you guys aren't going to work. I'm raking that paycheck in and staying asleep. So why does he have to bring up O'Neill Cruz yet when he can save a year of O'Neill Cruz of arbitration down the road when the team is actually good versus not investing in the team right now, but maybe investing in it soon? Does he care? Maybe a little bit. Maybe. Does he care enough? Hell no. If he cared enough, this team would be competing year in and year out. Or at least have a good roster. So does he care? Yeah, I'd put it about 25% right now. Maybe 30%. He doesn't care enough, though. Great question, though, Justin. Great question. Thank you so much. Big Pirates guy, which I believe his name is Sports by Spencer. Gotta love Spencer. Any upcoming FAs you think have a real shot at playing in the 4-1-2 next year? I will say it's kind of too early to answer this question. But if we're looking at the trajectory of what a perfect end to 2022 would be for the Pirates, Mitch Keller would be vastly improved. Roansy Contreras would be doing very well. Jose Quintana would either be extended or traded for a very good haul. Brian Reynolds would have improved. Ke'Bryan Hayes would keep pace. Mason Martin, O'Neill Cruz, and the likes would be up here already, which they will be, playing well. So where does that leave some of your holes? Well, relief pitching is going to be a big part of what I think the Pirates are going to be very, very active during the trade deadline at. Now, Gary has given me the advice to say they have a lot of control on these guys, which they do. Doesn't mean they can't be traded. So going into what upcoming FAs they could go for and have a real shot at, I can't give specific names, but starting pitching, I definitely think is something they need to go after again, and not the likes of Jose Quintana. I'm talking the likes of a guy you could put in the top 3 of this pitching staff and ease guys like Quinn Priester, Carmen Majinski, Tanaj Thomas, Michael Burrows, and Jared Jones in next year. Not just have to bring them up immediately and thrust them into the rotation. If you could add, say 5 guys, say this is your 5 for next year going into the season as a rotation. Thompson, Keller, Contreras, FA, Quintana, and I'll even add one more FA or one of the prospects like Michael Burrows. I'd be perfectly fine with that. Because you know why I'd be perfectly fine with that? Because next year, you're seeing all the position players right now. Roansy Contreras just so happened to be the guy that was ready now. Yurito Los Santos just happened to be the guy that was ready right now. Next year, it's going to do a flip. You're going to see Quinn Priester, Carmen Majinski, Jared Jones, Tanaj Thomas, Michael Burrows, Nick Mears, even. Bo Sulser, even, possibly. Cam Aldred. You're going to see a lot of these pitchers come up next year. It's going to be nuts. The Heath Hembrys of the world, gone. The Dwayne Underwoods, unless he continues to play well, gone. The Adonis Medinas, gone. You're going to have so many pitchers at your disposal. But I'd still like to see them go get a starter next year. Catcher, another thing you got to take care of. If it's Roberto Perez, it's Roberto Perez. That's fine. I think Henry Davis has a real shot to play next year. That's fine. If you don't have first base figured out by the end of this year, you got to go get one. And I'm not talking Daniel Vogelbach. You got to go get like a Trey Mancini type. You got to go get one of those guys. And I also wouldn't be mad if they went and got another outfielder. Jake Marisnick panned out pretty well until he got hurt. Ben Gamble's worked out phenomenal. And you have Brian Reynolds already. There's a lot of players in this league that would probably like to play alongside Brian Reynolds. I'll be honest with you on that. So, if you had to ask me what their top needs in free agency would be next year, starting pitching, relief pitching, first base, catcher, and outfield. So I'll give 5. That's probably what I would say, and that would be in that order: pitching first base second, catcher third, outfield fourth. Because you still have some good outfielders at your disposal, too. You're going to have Kanan Smith and Jigba come up eventually. You have Cal Mitchell up already. Sawinski's already up already. Travis Swaggerty will be up at some point. You're going to have Cal Mitchell's already up. You're going to have Hudson Head eventually is going to come up. Not yet. Lonnie White's going to eventually come up. Sammy Ciani is another guy that comes to mind. So you're going to have a lot of these guys come up eventually. So we'll see what they decide to do in FA. But who knows? And then the last question of today's episode here on Q&A Tuesday comes from Cam Morrissey. Hypothetically, if the Pirates were to trade any of their plethora of prospects for an established major leaguer, which players in the system do you think are overvalued that maybe you'd be willing to part ways with? Now, Cam is getting into the nitty-gritty here. Because if we're looking at Pirates prospects and some guys that you could trade for some established major leaguers next year, if you really want to compete, boy, oh boy, get me started. The top 5 is off limits. Let's just go ahead and say that now. Gonzalez, Davis, Cruz, Priester, Peguero, no way hell you trade those guys. Doesn't happen. Roansy Contreras, no. Andy Rodriguez, maybe you do it. Anthony Solometo, no. Bubba Chandler, no. Matt Frazier, another maybe. You never know. Mike Burrows, no. Jared Jones, maybe. Swaggerty, maybe. Majinski, no. Lonnie White, no. G1 Bay, hard yes. They haven't given G1 Bay a chance yet, but if you're not going to give him a chance and can get an established major leaguer for G1 Bay, make it happen. Mike Eliscado, still way too young. Kyle Nicholas, no. Jared Triolo, yes. Hudson Head, no. Kanan Smith, no. Martin, no. Marcano, no. Rodolfo Nolasco, maybe. Mitchell, no. Thomas, maybe. Sawinski, no. Luis Ortiz, possible. Connor Scott, no. Brennan Malone, maybe. They have some guys here that they could trade for some established major leaguers that are enticing. I mean, if you go to a team and you say, we're going to give you 24-year-old Matt Frazier who could potentially be ready as soon as you trade for him for a better outfielder, Charrington probably signs off on that. And with this said, by the way, we're going to get into this more on tomorrow's episode. Of course, tomorrow's episode will be a recap of the game tonight, as well as anything else that goes on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then on Thursday, we have Locked On MLB Prospects host Lindsey Crosby back on the podcast to talk all about O'Neal Cruz, Mason Martin, and this awesome farm system that the Pirates have at their disposal. Guys, thank you for the questions here on Q&A Tuesday. Thank you for always tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast and making this your first listen of the day every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Of course, thank you for making me your first listen, but go head out and listen to Locked On MLB featuring Paul Francis Sullivan, but please call him Sully, where he has all the news you need to know about everything going on in the world of Major League Baseball every single day. And with that said, guys, I'm your host who does the most, Ethan Smith, and I will see you on the flip side.